Okay, so it's 7:01 p.m. and let's call the roll, please, Darlene.
All right. Belvedere. Benicia.
Here.
Concord. Contra Costa County. Corte Madera.
Here.
Danville.
Here.
El Cerrito.
Here.
Fairfax.
Here.
Fairfield.
Here.
Lafayette. Gina, you're muted. I see you. Okay. Larkspur.
Here.
County of Marin.
Here.
Martinez.
Here.
Mill Valley.
Here.
Moraga. Napa and all 5 Napa cities. Novato.
Here.
Oakley. Pinole. Pittsburgh. Pleasant Hill.
Here.
Richmond.
Here.
Ross. San Anselmo.
Here.
San Pablo.
Here.
San Rafael. San
Here.
Ramon. San Rafael.
Here.
Thank you. San Ramon. Sausalito. Solano County. Tiburon.
Here.
Vallejo.
Here.
Walnut Creek. Quorum established.
Okay, the next item is board announcements. Are there any board members who have anything to announce? Okay. Oh, did Denise,
Hi
you got
there.
your hand up?
I think
I have my
Director
hand-
Rice.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I
Go
lost
ahead.
my Zoom screen. Just really quickly, I just wanted to share that the County of Marin did, and if I've already said this at the last meeting, just go like this 2 times. We did send a letter aligning ourselves and our interest with MCE and other CCAs in having the CPUC do rulemaking around PG&E's EPSS program. That's the fast trip program that they've begun using, I guess, last year, but more so this year throughout Marin County. Pockets of Marin County have been experiencing really frequent power outages due to this technology, which I think on its surface seems like a good thing. It's trying to prevent ignitions caused by strikes to wire lines, but or it's the utilities distribution lines, but it seems to be hypersensitive in some areas. And one of the perspectives that we have from the county is that when it's hitting areas that have also very poor cellular service, we are basically without telecommunications when the power goes off as well, unless you actually have power to your home. And as long as AT&T and Comcast or whoever your wireline telecommunications provider has actually got the backup power working for when power goes out. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. I testified at the CPUC meeting during open time last month, and we actually have ex parte meetings set up in the next coming weeks with various commissioners, and I'm working with a couple other supervisors from other counties on this issue.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
And good luck.
Yeah.
We had similar issues in Richmond and had multiple meetings with PG&E and invited them to a city council meeting. But I'm not sure any of it helped. Anyone else?
I have an announcement.
Director Quinto, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Friday, I attended the opening of the fabrication center that is building the units that they will put in Richmond with Republic Services, and that is creating green hydrogen, and that was in the city of Benicia. So to see that really working, and it was working, we're on our way for this green circular economy. I'm just so happy to see that, and to see that our corporate partners in Contra Costa and Solano County are part of this, looking at the green fields that was created by the solar fields created by MCE and Chevron at the Chevron property, and looking at Republic Services. We're on our way in creating green hydrogen through electrolysis. And this is done by using our refuse, our garbage, our recyclables, and it's happening now. So look forward and having that being built and over into the city of Richmond. And I know El Cerrito's trash is sent over there. So all of our recycling will be creating green hydrogen for that. And looking at what folks want to do in the future with climate change, this will create cleaner air in areas like San Pablo and Richmond, and this new green economy. So I hope when they have the opening at Republic Services in Richmond, that all of us will get a chance to take a look at that. It's pretty amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Haroff, go ahead. Unmute, please.
And thank you. Since we're going at it, I thought I'd just mention that we had a very good ad hoc contracts committee meeting today, where various members of this board participated in discussion about MCE's open season process and the outcome of it preliminarily. It was a very productive conversation. I learned a lot, even though I've done it before. So I think that process is well underway, and it will be percolating up through the technical committee here soon, and we'll have recommendations in the not too distant future.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to public open time. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on any item that is not on our agenda or is on our consent calendar. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
There are no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The next item is one that's very familiar to all of us. Resolution number 2022-10, authorizing continued remote teleconference meetings for the Board of Directors and every committee of the Board of Directors pursuant to Government Code 54953E. Do we have any questions on that? I doubt it. Do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on it?
There are no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second,
Okay, I heard a motion by Green, a second by whom?
Holly Thier.
Okay. So let's call the roll, please.
Belvedere.
Yes.
Benicia.
Yes.
Concord. Contra Costa County. Corte Madera.
Yes.
Danville.
Yes.
El Cerrito.
Yes.
Fairfax.
Yes.
Fairfield.
Yes. Yes.
Lafayette.
Yes.
Larkspur.
Yes.
County of Marin.
Yes.
Martinez.
Yes.
Mill Valley.
Yes.
Moraga.
Yes.
Napa. Novato.
Yes.
Oakley, Pinole, Pittsburgh, Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross, San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Pablo,
Yes.
San Rafael,
Yes.
San Ramon, Sausalito, Solano County, Tiburon,
Yes.
Vallejo,
Yes.
Walnut Creek. Motion carries.
The next item is a report from the Chief Executive Officer. Go ahead, Dawn.
Great. Thank you so much. I wanted to start off with asking folks to join me in welcoming MCE's two new board members, Max Perret from the city of Mill Valley and Eli Beckman, former MCE alternate, now becoming a board member from the town of Puerto Madera. Directors Perret and Beckman were sworn in just prior to the board meeting, so we're really grateful to have them with us tonight. Yeah, welcome. And then on a more somber note, I wanted to pass along the bittersweet news that Shalini Swarup departed MCE in early August. She was our former general counsel. But she's leaving us in the capable hands of Catalina Murphy and Mike Callahan for general counsel functions. And Shalini will be continuing her education with courses at Stanford's Business School, volunteering with nonprofits, and campaigning for candidates in the upcoming midterm elections. So she won't be far away, and we expect to stay in touch. She will be greatly missed, but she's left behind a strong team and many contributions to MCE. I just wanted to make sure you all were aware. Next, I wanted to let folks know that MCE has been distributing portable batteries to medically vulnerable residents for the summer season. And we've got more information on our website, but if you're aware of customers in need of vulnerable, especially medically vulnerable customers, let us know. You can reach out to me, Darlene, Jessica, really anyone on our team, and we can make sure they get connected. And hopefully we have a few more to go around for this season. Next, I wanted to let folks know that MCE will be pausing membership in the Community Choice Power Authority. We have not had a need to participate in joint procurement with this JPA so far, and we've been successful in contracting directly on our own. But this pause is likely to be temporary, and we expect to rejoin in the future, subject to market and technology needs. We'll be sort of keeping an eye on opportunities that come up in the future, and we'll keep you posted. Next, I wanted to share the exciting news that we're beginning to develop some of the structural elements in the virtual power plant that's been in the press a lot lately. This is the virtual power plant that we are going to be setting up in Richmond and hoping to expand to other communities in the future. We'd like to set up an informational working group with a few interested board members. And so I'm inviting you all. We haven't formally set it up yet, but this working group is really open to any board member. We can't have a quorum of the board or any board committee, but other than that, it's open to any board member. So if you're interested, let me know or let Darlene or Jessica know, and we'll get you on the list. Next, I wanted to just let folks know about a 4-year contract that's in the works for 110 megawatts of resource adequacy. That will be included in the next report out to your board. And last, we're going to hear a little bit more about this in the policy update later in the agenda, but I wanted to say just a little bit about Governor Newsom's announcements recently to work on transitioning California to clean energy, really on an accelerated timeline, along with other climate change measures. He recently signed an executive order to combat the biodiversity and climate change crisis in California, urging nature-based solutions. And one of the things that's noteworthy about this executive order is establishing a state goal to conserve at least 30% of California's land and coastal waters by 2023, launch the California Biodiversity Collaborative, and elevate the role of natural and working lands as a pillar of California's climate change strategy. So this This bold announcement also highlights the role of California Native American tribes as critical partners, and we're hoping that it'll further catalyze action to protect some of the biodiversity around our coast and ecosystems. So we're excited, and we'll get to hear more. That's kind of a teaser. We're going to hear more about some of the governor's announcements and other legislative activity later in the agenda. And then the very last thing I wanted to pass along is just a reminder that we're going to be holding our board retreat next month. This is the annual board retreat. It's going to be virtual again this year due to continuing issues with the pandemic. Hopefully we'll be able to be in person before too much longer. But for now, we're planning to have the retreat virtually. It's set for Thursday, September 29th from 9 to 3 p.m. You should have it on your calendar already. We did send invites around, but double check, make sure it's on there, and you'll be getting an agenda and more information in the coming weeks. And that's it for my report. Any questions?
Hey, thank you. Director Green, go ahead.
Yes, Don, with respect to the governor's announcement, I don't know if it was part of that or a separate one wherein he announced an intention perhaps to keep Diablo Canyon operable rather than continuing on the path to shut it down. Is that going to be addressed later on tonight?
Yes, that's going to take a little more time, and we are going to talk about that this evening. Stephanie will be covering that. Yeah, thanks for asking. That's definitely on all our radar.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Director Wilkinson, go ahead.
Hi, Dawn, and this may be addressed later tonight as well, so forgive me if that's the case. I was interested to learn a little bit more about the impact of the investment tax credit for standalone storage in the Inflation Reduction Act, and how that will impact MCE in terms of its strategy, and also whether it has any implications for the resource adequacy battery contract that we approved last month.
Yeah, excellent question. It will not have an impact on the battery storage contract that we approved last month, but it could have a big impact on our structuring of future contracts. It would give us the ability to take advantage of the tax credits in the way that commercial entities have been able to in the past. And as you may know, many of our, well, all of our power purchase agreements are set up so that there's a private commercial entity doing the developing so that they can take advantage of those tax credits and monetize them. And that helps us keep the price lower than it would otherwise be. With public agencies being able to monetize those tax credits, we may be in a position to build and own without having a commercial partner involved. So we're definitely watching that very closely. We've been supporting that concept for years, actually. And you may recall we were involved in a coalition of folks around the time that President Biden was elected to make recommendations on what types of legislation could have a real impact on the clean energy front. And this was one of the things that we put forward as a recommendation. I'm not taking credit for it. I'm sure there were many others involved in getting that on the radar.
But Dawn, sorry, just to clarify, obviously that's a big 30% difference in price. And so that's a huge loss to MCE, or an additional burden that we paid because we signed a contract last month rather than signing one in, say, 2 months' time at 30% discount. Or have I misunderstood that? And is there really no way to go back and renegotiate that? Because that seems like a giant loss for MCE's customers.
Yeah, Director Wilkinson, yeah, I think you are misunderstanding it. The way it works is that the commercial entity passes those benefits along to us in the price. So
Right.
we're able to take advantage of those ITC tax credits by having a commercial partner. And
Right.
If we were to develop a project directly, we would not, we would still be able to have the economic value passed along to customers. There would be a little more risk involved directly because we would be managing and developing ourselves, but we would have a little more control over it. So I think the pros and cons are really more about risk allocation and a little bit less about economics.
So I do want to understand. So that provider, his tax situation hasn't changed between now and within new legislation, and another provider coming in would not be able to benefit and give us cheaper pricing.
Not at this time. And I see Lindsay Saxby's got her hand up, so she probably has some additional information. Go ahead.
Yeah, just as a quick update, we actually seeing this on the horizon. We have been negotiating that we would share in the upside of an ITC for standalone storage. So we actually do have that in the equity contract. That if that were to come to fruition, that we would share in that upside. So we have that in that contract, and we've been negotiating it in other contracts as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. So what you're saying is that you've shared in the upside, but if it had been a new contract, you would have gained all of the upside, correct? Yes.
Well, I think even in a new contract, right, we would likely share in that benefit, right, with the counterparty taking part of that upside and then them passing through that benefit as well to us in the contract price as Don described.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Director Rice, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask the silly question, but hopefully there's somebody else there that didn't raise their hand that wants to ask the question too. I can't remember, what is a virtual power plant?
I think Vicken Kasarjian, our COO, might like to take that one.
Sure. You should volunteer for the team, Director Rice.
Well, I want to know what I'm volunteering for first.
So a virtual power plant is through in electrical IT system to connect at a household the solar rooftop, electric water heater, battery, smart thermostat, and EV together to optimize the home, the house, the CNI customer, and then implement a connectivity to similar locations in the neighborhood. And for this one, we are aiming at the city of Richmond. So it's going to be about 100 sites where we're going to collect all this information from charging, discharging, usage, heating water, and through an algorithm, create a total optimization for all the customers that are using power and are storing power, and optimize any surplus in about 2 to 3 years to be aggregated and bidded to the California ISO as a resource and settled with the ISO. So the intent is, the beauty of our project is that, number one, it addresses local issues like providing a 21st century all-electric home to a person that never had a home before or owned a home before with all these amenities. And therefore, it is, in my mind, and it's a little bit of an oxymoronic statement, it's the first real virtual power plant that takes the assets at every single location, at every single home or CNI customer, and creates an actual physical schedule with the California ISO, like if it's coming from a real power plant, and it has a settlement with the ISO. I hope I was...
No, thank you very much. I think I got about 60% of that. No, in terms of concept. And yeah, it's fascinating. That gives me a lot more, and I'm remembering some things. Thank you, Vic. And potentially I'd like to be on that little ad hoc group, but my schedule is horrible for.
Oh, well, when we establish the documents, we'll love to share it. I will have some drawings and like diagrams that will help a little bit better explaining it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sounds super exciting.
Super excited, yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments from directors? I don't see any hands up. Are there any members of the public who want to speak on this item?
No hands, Chair.
Okay, that brings us to the consent calendar. There are 3 items on the consent calendar. Does anybody want to remove any of them? I don't see any requests to remove them. So I would be looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Public comment.
Second. I'll second.
We need public comment.
Well, we have public comment on the consent calendar. That happens at public open time.
Oh,
That's the public has an opportunity at public open time to either speak on items not on the agenda or items on the consent calendar. At least that's the way I've always done it, but.
okay.
We could ask if there are any members of the public want to take another shot at the consent calendar.
There are no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, so was a motion by Director Green, is that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and second by Director
Zolin.
Deere, right? Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Belvedere,
Yes.
Benicia,
Yes.
Concord, Contra Costa County, Corte Madera,
Yes.
Danville,
Yes.
El Cerrito,
Yes.
Fairfax,
Yes.
Fairfield,
Yes.
Lafayette,
Yes.
Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Martinez, Martinez,
Yes.
Mill Valley,
Yes.
Moraga,
Yes.
Napa, Novato,
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Pinole, Pittsburgh, Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes,
Ross, San Anselmo,
Yes.
San Pablo,
Yes.
San Rafael,
Yes.
San Ramon, Sausalito, Solano County, Tiburon,
Yes.
Vallejo,
Yes.
Walnut Creek. Motion carries.
okay, thank you. The next item 7 is proposal to default new accounts to Deep Green Service. This is pretty interesting.
Yeah. And if I might make an introductory comment, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Chief of Staff, Jamie Tuckey. But I wanted to just kind of go back to the early days before MCE was formed, back in, 2007, 2008. A lot of folks like the folks on the screen here, local government leaders were talking about how could we really make a difference and reduce our carbon emissions through providing clean energy. And we came up with this idea of light green and deep green. And we were, being the first CCA, we had to be careful not to, we had to be careful to walk before we run and not do too much at one time. And we started off with the light green product being our default product, wanting to keep prices affordable and make sure that we'd be able to procure enough renewable energy. And we're finally in a position now, we've been serving customers now for about 12 years, and we've really had a lot of experience buying the renewables that we need, keeping the budget in good shape. And we have seen during this time, while other CCAs across the state have formed, some of them have been able to launch with a approach where they're defaulting customers into the 100% renewable option. And we thought, wow, that would be really neat if we could do that, one day. And we have been doing some analysis. We've been doing a lot of analysis, really, both on the procurement side and on the finance side and on the customer care side, to determine if we might be able to make a transition, at least with our new customers that are, whenever they are moving into our service area, the potential of defaulting them into our 100% renewable product, Deep Green, has been kind of an intriguing idea. We've gotten inquiries from some of our board members, some of you over the last few years about, could we consider doing this. And I think we're at a point where we can. And so without saying any more, I'm just going to turn it over to Jamie Tuckey, who's been also has been with MCE since the very beginning and knows the history and knows how exciting this option is and this opportunity is. So I'm going to turn it over to her to run through the details and answer questions. We also have a lot of other great staff on the line that have been involved in the analysis and can also answer questions as they come up. So I'll turn it over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Dawn. Good evening, everyone. It's really great to be with you tonight. I think that I'm feeling similarly to Dawn. I've been working at MCE since before our launch in 2010. And so I'm feeling especially excited and honored to introduce this proposal to you tonight, because I think that if your board approves it, making Deep Green 100% renewable, our new standard default service, is going to go down in our MCE history books. So I'm excited to talk to you all about it and what our proposal is. That being said, about the MCE history book, I do want to note that several other CCAs have already made 100% renewable or 100% carbon-free their default service option. So just to name a handful of those: East Bay Community Energy, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, Clean Power Alliance, Central Coast Community Energy, and San Diego Community Energy have all made strides in that direction. Before we talk about the details of our proposal, I want to start by laying out the land with what energy choices our customers have. So light green 60% renewable is currently our default option. And that means that any customer who starts service with MCE is automatically going to start with light green. Of course, they also have the choice to opt up to deep green 100% renewable. They can opt up to local sol, which is 100% local solar, or they can opt out for PG&E's generation service, which is 49% renewable according to their latest estimates. And so obviously making this jump from 60% to 100% renewable energy for all of our new accounts is really going to accelerate our progress in combating climate change. I want to clarify what new accounts mean. So when we're talking about new accounts, we're including people who are moving into a new or an existing building. This could be at home or at a workplace, of course, within our service area, and they're starting a new PG&E service account. And by starting service with PG&E, they are starting service with MCE. And on average, we have about 8,800 new accounts starting service with us each month. Under this proposal, they would all be starting on Deep Green 100% renewable. And to give you a little bit more feel of the impact, right now we have about 13,000 customers who have signed up for Deep Green. So if you imagine, 8,000 plus more Deep Green accounts coming in every month, we're really making a huge impact. Of course, cost is a really important consideration, and both light green and deep green currently cost less compared to PG&E. And this year, we're actually anticipating saving our customers about $70 million. The extra penny per kilowatt hour for deep green does cost residential customers about $6 more per month compared to light green. But with today's rates, it's still about $7 less per month compared to PG&E. So customers can get 100% renewable deep green energy and still have a savings every month. And I love saying that. I love that we're simultaneously confronting this climate crisis with renewable energy and we're saving our customers money at the same time. I think it's a win-win for all of us. And as you know, we aim to center equity in all of our work. So we want to ensure that our lower income customers aren't disproportionately impacted by the higher costs of deep green if we move forward with this proposal. We also want to ensure that they're not precluded. So new accounts who start service and are on California's discount rate programs, which are called CARE or FARA, they would not have to pay the deep green premium under this proposal. That's a really exciting piece of this plan. So instead of charging them that extra penny per kilowatt hour, MCE would be able to cover the premium by relying on our local renewable energy and program development fund. This fund is funded primarily by a portion of that deep green revenue. So the way it works is that half of the extra penny per kilowatt hour for deep green goes to MCE's operating budget, and the other half goes to the local renewable energy and program development fund. And this fiscal year, just for reference, those funds are being used for rebates for our EV charging stations, low-income solar, and heat pump water heaters. But through this proposal, that funding would increase with the addition of deep green customers and the additional revenues that would come with it. And we would be able to use those revenues to cover the deep green premium for the lower income customers. So that's a high level of what we're wanting to do. So I want to talk a little bit about how we would do that. As part of this analysis, we looked at what the procurement requirements would be. So making deep green the default service will definitely require additional incremental energy procurement. And we usually plan for 300 gigawatt hours of incremental procurement every year. To support this proposal, we expect that we would need to add an additional 600 gigawatt hours in the first year on top of that. So that would, that's going to be an important part of this, ensuring that we have the renewable energy for these customers. And we may need flexibility in our procurement to do that. And what I mean by flexibility is what we use to make up deep green. So right now, deep green is 100% California solar and wind energy. And there is a possibility that when we go to market, in order to meet the demand, we would need to procure other renewables, such as geothermal or biomass. And there's a possibility, if we did procure something like geothermal or biomass, that there would be a slight emissions factor with that. Another example of flexibility in procurement that we could need is potentially out-of-state renewables. I do want to emphasize that if it ends up being the case that we would need more flexibility in what we use to make up deep green, we would bring these options back to your board for evaluation and approval at a future meeting. And then, of course, we did a detailed financial analysis, and our analysis actually indicates that making deep green the default would result in additional revenue. We anticipate that it would start at about 2.4 million the first year. We pulled these analyses together using pretty conservative numbers for participation based on what we currently see. We assumed that 5% of new accounts would opt down to light green and 8% would opt out altogether. I do want to note that the additional revenue, again, would be split between our operational fund, which would help cover the cost of the procurement, and that local renewable energy and program development fund, which would cover, in addition to the other things that we use it for, it would cover the deep green premium for our lower income customers. Let's see, the other thing I wanted to talk about just briefly is timing for when we would do this. Like Dawn said, we've had a lot of staff working to analyze this and make a plan. And we think that the best path forward, if your board approves this, would be to implement on January 1 next year. That would give us time to procure energy. It would give us time to coordinate with our community groups, like our Community Power Coalition, and get feedback on our marketing and communications and update all of those materials as well. So with that, before we talk about the recommendation specifically that we're asking for, I want to pause and take questions and feedback. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay, I'm sure somebody has questions. Director Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's some merits to this, but I do have a couple of questions, and maybe I'll just throw them all out at once. One is, perhaps I read the staff reporting correctly, but I thought it was talking about only for new accounts, so new enrollment. So I'm not sure when, Jamie, you mentioned 8,000 new opt-ups a month, how that would work, because we don't have any new communities coming on. We're already doing that. But the second piece is, what concerns me about this is when you mentioned procuring different energy sources. And for those of us who are already in deep green, with our cities, I think Fairfax was one of the very first, but also we have the highest deep green signups here. I think people signed up to Deep Green for wind and solar. And when you mentioned the emissions with geothermal and biomass, I mean, that just sort of doesn't seem like a real good way to go. So a few questions, maybe you could answer those three. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll start with the first about new accounts. You are correct. You read the staff report correctly. We are only talking about what we're calling new accounts, but with new accounts, it's anytime someone starts a new service account. So if someone moves from one home to another home, it could, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a new person. I could be moving from one house in Richmond to another house in El Cerrito, and me moving to El Cerrito would create a new account. So 8,800 does seem like a high amount, but that is what we're seeing on average for the churn for customers moving in and out of buildings. And it's including both residential and commercial. So does that answer your first question?
Yeah, I mean, it seems really high, but you said that's what you're seeing in the churn. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then your other question was about, I may have missed the third, but the second question was about procurement and the flexibility that we mentioned in that, and the possibility that we could potentially need to expand beyond solar, California solar and wind to meet the needs. What we've requested with this staff report is direction from your board, basically to direct staff to bring this issue back to your board at another meeting to discuss in more detail. So we would prepare that information for you based on what we find in the market and our analysis, and bring it back to the board for more evaluation. And Lindsay, I don't know if you would want to weigh in any more on that, or if I've captured everything there.
Yeah, I think you captured it well. I would just emphasize that we're still proposing to serve Deep Green with complete renewable energy.
So just one.
There are still CEC and CPUC renewable eligible that have very, very slight emissions associated with them. And as we sort of build out our portfolio and are serving more customers with Deep Green, we may need some flexibility there to be able to serve those customers with other types of technologies. But as Jamie said, we can bring back more data related to that if that would be helpful.
So can I just ask a follow-up? I mean, at least the way I read the staff report, it appears that we would be giving approval to going forward with this concept. And that what you're saying is once approved, then you would come back with what the mix would be and what those emissions data would be. But we're pretty much down that road. If you're talking about January, that's only a few months, correct?
It's so how I would explain it is that we're asking for your board to authorize to move forward and make Deep Green the default for new accounts. And if we need additional flexibility on procurement, so beyond what we currently have for Deep Green, then we would come back to your board and ask for you to evaluate and approve that.
And I'd like to add a caveat to that. I think that is one, if the reason that we are bringing up the products that are in Deep Green as a possible constraint is just that the market is we don't know what to expect in the future with the market, and there may be an opportunity or a need to consider other types of resources for the Deep Green mix. There could also be ways of addressing market constraints in different ways. Adjusting the price for Deep Green. We've never adjusted the price since we started offering Deep Green, and we wouldn't be. I just want to clarify that we're not. We would have a number of options to bring to your board if we're finding constraints in the market, and that would be just one of the options that could be contemplated and evaluated based on feedback from the board and the public.
Okay, thank you.
Director Thier, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. Are comments in order now or just questions?
Questions. Well,
Questions.
you can comment, whatever.
Okay, then I will comment. I just want to thank staff for bringing this proposal to us. And, you know, when we talk about deep green and we talk about getting our customers moved to deep green and impacting climate change, this is the single most important thing that we could do. And I don't want it lost on my fellow directors that, you know, a lot of times, and I think MCE started this way, please correct me if I'm wrong, Dawn, but, you know, customers had to opt in to deep green. And I know I did when I got my bill. And having a system where it is the default system means that we are providing cleaner, greener power to all of our customers in a much quicker way that saves them from having to say, oh, okay, I need to now opt in and sign these other forms to become deep green. So I really want to commend staff and commend Dawn. You know, one of the things about serving on this board is we have some of the most amazing staff, I think, in the world. And this one act, if we approve it, directors, will help combat climate change in a way that we could have never dreamed when MCE was first set up. So I just want to express my complete support for this plan. I also want to say that I'm also excited that you figured out a way to do it and actually save money. And I really want to commend staff and say these are the types of creative, innovative ideas that will really help stem the tide of climate change. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Wilkinson, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a few questions. The first one is, it's a really fundamental question, which is when someone, for example, signs up to 100% solar, that customer's expecting, I assume, to receive 100% solar. How does that happen in the night?
I'm happy to answer that question. So, and anyone, I don't, Dawn, maybe we're going to jump in as well. But so, you know, we don't guarantee that any customer is going to be getting a specific electron, because I think you just called it out. That's not physically possible, because we're all sharing the California grid. All of the different energy providers are putting their energy sources onto the grid to meet their customers' needs. So if we have a customer who signs up for local sol, for example, we are going to commit to putting 100% of that customer's electricity needs, like equating their usage with local solar. We use the Novato local pooling quarry, but we can't guarantee that the solar will go directly to their home. And that is a question that we sometimes get from customers. So we are careful in our marketing to never say, like, we're delivering 100% renewable energy to your home. And it's kind of one of our typical FAQs that we get when we're out and about. But yeah, the answer is that it's just not physically possible unless the home is actually connected to the power source to guarantee where their electricity is coming from.
But does it mean if these people sign up that you go and procure one for one the extra amount of clean energy that they are signed up for?
Yes.
Okay. So in the PCC1 basket, what is in that?
I'm going to punt that over to Lindsay.
So what are PCC1 eligible resources? Is that your question, Sally?
Yeah, and how does that differ from people who are on light green? What are they signing up for in terms of they're not on PCC1? I assume they're on something else.
So yeah, and just to maybe expand on what Jamie said, we are required to serve customers kind of on an annual basis. So we're looking at their annual usage and making sure that we're buying enough renewable energy to cover that. So we don't have sort of an hourly requirement related to, solar, obviously not being able to deliver at night. So I hope that helps sort of with that part of the question, your earlier question. But, our light green customers are getting 60% renewable energy. And that includes a variety of technologies. So that would include small hydro, that includes landfill gas facilities, biomass facilities, geothermal. And some of those do have also slight emissions associated with them as well, but they are, defined as PCC1, product content category 1, renewable resources within the state of California.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. What's the difference between what the deep green receive in terms of their basket versus people on light green?
Yeah, and then the deep green, we've narrowed that to just be solar and wind technologies that are serving those customers. And those technologies happen to be 100% GHG free and renewable.
Okay, it seems that a lot of this is just that people who sign up for deep green are paying more for their basket of energy than people on light green. And it's a basket that's shared between everybody. But I had a question on the finances of this, because this is a bit I really wanted to understand, which is that you've provided a breakdown of the fiscal analysis. I don't know the page number. And so you're saying, for example, in calendar year 2023, you generate extra revenue of about 6.6 million, and that your incremental increase in costs is just over 3 million, but then you're going to allocate 50% to the operating fund. What does that mean exactly?
So 50% of the deep green premium goes to our operating fund, which would help cover the cost of procurement and administering the program. And the other 50% would go to that local renewable, I'm going to shorten the name for ease right now, but the local renewable development and program fund that pays for right now some of our program rebates and would help offset the cost of deep green. It wouldn't help, it would eliminate the cost of deep green for our low income customers.
But net, this maneuver makes quite a lot of additional net revenue for Marine Clean Energy, correct?
I'm going to hand it off to Garth because he is our CFO and will speak to this better than I will.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
No, so Director Wilson, yeah, I think we do in fact anticipate that this program converting this many new accounts into deep green, given that additional 1 cent that's charged for deep green. It looks right now, based upon this analysis, that it does produce additional net revenue. And so again, we need to be relatively conservative on just what the incremental cost of the PCC1 energy is going to be. And so, but yes, I mean, as we continue to put more customers on, we have 8,000 or 8,800 customers a month would get us, so, over 10 or 100,000 customers over the course of a full year. And this analysis really looks at like sort of a full year of new customers. And again, it's the additional 40% that we have to procure, that additional 1 cent based upon our estimate of the cost to procure that additional energy. Yes, it does produce a net revenue to us, an increase in net revenue.
Okay.
And
So
I just want to add, sorry, I just wanted to add that that's what allows us to incorporate the concept of covering that 1 cent for our care customers so that they aren't paying that premium. We'd have enough revenue coming in to cover that on their behalf.
But this is a net figure after that, correct? You're still producing significant additional net revenue even after you've made that transfer.
Yes, I'm just trying to look up here. So yes, there is additional net revenue, but primarily the largest part that impact on our operating fund, Director Wilkinson, is $70,000 projected in the first kind of full year after we implement this. So
but that's because you've allocated $3 million to an operating fund.
No, you mean to the Local Renewable Energy and Program Development Fund.
It says allocation to operating fund and local resource fund.
Yeah, that's okay. That is the 3.2 million that's 50% going to the operating fund, and 50% going to the local renewable energy fund. But then we have the cost of procurement, which is 3.0212 million. We also expect people to opt out. And so for the operating fund, in terms of, covering the cost to procure the energy, that just nets us about $70 million. Okay. We're also, again, allocating half of that additional revenue to the local renewable energy fund. We're going to be paying the care and fair customers out of that. So the net, if you want to talk about the net, is primarily going to the local renewable energy and program development fund, which again goes towards programs that are primarily all the programs that we fund with the out of the local renewable energy program.
Okay, that's okay. The table doesn't add up, by the way. The numbers don't add up. But I think the more important point is, I think what you're saying is that you're asking new customers who are not low income to pay a lot to subsidize customers who are low income to all get apparently more clean energy, and letting everybody else continue to play at a lower rate and receive, in theory, a lower share of renewable energy in their portfolio. That seems deeply inequitable to me. You either ask everybody, do you want to go deep green, and give everybody the opportunity to opt in if they feel like this is real, but to just punish new customers and only wealthy new customers, and then feed back to lower income, but leave all of us in Marin, for example, paying lower rates seems deeply inequitable to me. But that's just my opinion.
Well, all customers have the ability to opt in to deep green.
Sure, but you're forcing people who might not have, might be low information people. They'll just sign up. They won't know that there's options to opt out, and they'll be paying more for energy than other people in other communities who aren't moving houses. It doesn't seem a fair playing field to me. So I will be voting no.
Okay, Director Perry, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our staff for this great work. And for those who don't know me, nice to meet you. And those who I do know, great to see you all. Just a couple of questions here. So I guess my first question is whether we've looked at what the impact this will have on the overall percentage of renewable energy for MCE customers. So thinking about kind of the overall percentage, right? If you add up the local solar customers, the deep green customers, and the light green customers, presumably we get a percentage of renewable content, right? And I know there's different definitions on what renewable is there. So using the definition.
Where's your Wonder Woman suit?
Sorry?
Where's your Wonder Woman suit?
Oh. Sorry, Kevin. I think you're off.
Oops, sorry.
I don't have a Wonder Woman suit right now, but if I find it, I'll let you know.
I've got
Anyway, yeah, just wondering if we've looked at the overall percentage here, right? Because I think that could help clear up some of the questions that have come up.
Lindsay, does I know part of the report that we talked about was the additional incremental procurement that this would require each year. And so we usually plan 300 gigawatt hours. This proposal would require us to procure an additional 600 gigawatt hours. Can we do the math with that for the percentage?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the premise of your question, because the customers that will be on deep green will be 100% renewable, and then customers that aren't opted up remain at 60% renewable. So maybe, sorry, can you restate your question? I might be missing.
Sure. So the more people who are on deep green, right, the overall percentage is going to go up, right? And the less that are on deep green, the percentage is going to go down. So I was just wondering if we had any analysis or had looked at kind of the math in terms of as we add those additional new customers onto deep green versus light green, right? What the overall increase would be in terms of the total renewable energy content.
I see. What's the percent change of people that will be 100% renewable compared to the status quo?
Less the percentage, not the percentage of the customers, but more the percentage of the overall mix. If that makes sense.
I can take a shot at that.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So MCE's goal, I believe, is to get to 90% renewable by, I guess it's what, 2029. Is that correct? Is that our current goal? So this program, again, if you think about that, the numbers in that turnover, and the turnover, we're already at 60% renewable over the course of a year. And given that kind of turnover, another 100,000 customers, we're not going to always turn, new customers into deep green, but there'll be some repeats and move outs from the same locations. But we will accelerate that with this program, assuming the same number of move outs every year and declining net move ins. We will accelerate that to 90%, much more like 2027. 28 or 27. Again, because all that turnover at 100%, we will reach that goal a lot sooner.
Great, thank you. And then what happens to the energy that we're procuring currently for light green that we will no longer need because it doesn't meet the specifications of deep green? Do we then sell that on the market? What happens to that energy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually have some open positions as we go out into the future years. So the energy that we would have used to serve that 40% of energy that's GHG free but not renewable, we just will reduce our purchases of that type of energy and replace that with renewable energy. So we're not over procured in that type of energy at this point, because we often buy that in sort of short-term buckets over as we go throughout the year.
Great, thanks. That's it for me.
Okay. Director Beckman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to second Holly's comments. I definitely appreciate a number of the questions that have been raised by board members, and I certainly understand that there's an array of different sources out there that are considered renewable, but that some of those have environmental impacts, adverse impacts outside of carbon, and so that because of that, board members might rightly, feel better or worse about certain renewable sources. I just want to say, from my standpoint, personally, I think from a climate perspective, I definitely would see the top priority as moving as many customers to deep green as possible, as quickly as possible. And I do believe that this board will have ample time in the future to prioritize, refine our prioritization of different renewable sources based on, other adverse impacts that different renewable sources may have. But on balance, I would say that Corte-Madera would be strongly in favor of this.
Okay, let's see. I think Director Haroff is next.
Well, I guess I better unmute myself. Sorry about the open mic faux pas a moment ago. It was a family joke. In any event, I want to express my strong support for what Eli just said and what Holly said previously. As I think the staff report made clear, this proposal is consistent with the direction that this and the mission that this entity has been pursuing since its inception. And it's an additional step towards success. So I think a lot of these issues can be sorted out as we work through the implementation of the proposal. But I think what we're being asked to do tonight is to support the proposal in a fundamental way with some of the issues that have been raised to be addressed in the very near future. And that's actually one of the questions that I have. So it's not really a question but a comment, because as I mentioned, we did have the ad hoc contracts committee meet today, and a lot of these issues about what's our mix going forward and what are the market conditions that are putting constraints on what some of our options are those are issues that are relevant to our overall procurement strategy. So it's not going to go away just because we're moving forward with this program. My question is, it really has to do with the additional procurement needs that we would have to develop in the near future. And I think that that's an important issue, not necessarily to get into the weeds on in this context, but I do think it's important for us to have a robust discussion at the next technical committee meeting, where we'll be talking about procurement issues, and to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we will be needing to meet those procurement goals. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I believe Director Meisner's next.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the very detailed report and the great discussion we're having. So I have a question about the 90% goal to 2029. Is that legislatively defined, or is that our personal, something that we've set?
That's our personal goal. It's our agency goal. It definitely exceeds the statewide goal.
Mm-hmm. And do you think there could be possibility of creating a goal for energy aggregators to actually meet something like that? Frankly, I don't. I mean, the lawyers in the room might know the answer to this question if that's possible for that to happen in the future.
Well, yeah, typically CCAs set their own goals because they are autonomous, local government agencies. So there's not a state oversight over CCAs, which gives us the flexibility to set goals based on what our community wants.
Great. And so would it be, so instead of enrolling new customers into Deep Green, is it possible to just switch everybody who's light green that were just opted in or that were just enrolled in light green and that didn't change? Is that possible?
Do you want to take that, Jamie, or do you want me to?
Unmuting. Yes, I believe it would be possible, but it would take a little bit more work. So there is a possibility that we would need to update our implementation plan with the CPUC. And Dawn, you can correct me if that's not the case. I know that was part of the legal analysis. But I think converting everyone who's already with us and switching them to a new service may require that. I think the bigger piece of work that would go along with that is noticing every single one of our customers. So one of the nice things about this method is that we are already, every new account that starts service with us gets 2 notices in the mail from us saying, hey, thanks for starting your service. You're an MCE customer. Here are all of your options. So switching them to Deep Green is really easy as far as communications with our customers go. If we switched every existing customer, it would require additional noticing to them. And so that would be it would be a significant cost. It might not sound like it, but mailing every customer multiple mailers, letting them know would be significant. And I think it would also have a significantly larger impact on our procurement requirements in order to meet that demand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with anybody who's an elected who's sent out direct mail knows that postage is really expensive. So
it is. It's right? Really expensive. Yeah.
Yes. It's probably the most expensive part of campaigning. So the reason why I ask is, it's too bad, back in the day that the Deep Green option wasn't originally adopted. And I think it sounds like other agencies do have that. It's just the way it is that we didn't start that way, and I can see why. And so, without a lot of work and a lot of expense, this is really the path to that 90% goal, which I think we all agree. It's some people are, it's going to create some imbalance, which I know is not great, but I think the overall goal to reduce our impact is more important collectively. I think looking at it from a macro rather than a micro is really important. So I definitely want to support this, and thank you for your work.
Okay, Director Green, go ahead.
Thank you, Tom. So I agree that the 90% end is a laudable and desired objective. But just because it's laudable and desired doesn't mean, to me, that the means employed in order to attain it necessarily are justified. And here, I have a real problem with making up the minds of customers for them. I think it shows a lack of respect for their autonomy and their decision-making process. Proper respect gives choice. And instead of giving choice, we're making up their minds for them. And for me, as a consumer, I'm pretty used to being disrespected by corporate entities, but that doesn't mean I like it. And that doesn't make me want to go along with them. And so here, going in, I think it's a mistake to use the heaviest hand because we think our objectives are worth it. I mean, and they are worth it, but they're not worth it by engaging customers with what I consider to be a lack of respect. I think it's high-handed and that it would be a mistake. And with respect to the arguments about, oh, well, we can deal with it, we'll sort it out downstream. I mean, come on. Everybody who's been around long enough knows that those kind of arguments come up frequently, but very, very seldomly is anything ever changed once you commit and you start down a particular path. So I don't really buy that. And I agree with Commissioner Wilkinson's criticisms and position, and I too will be voting no.
Okay, Director Wagenknecht.
Thank you. First off, there's always choice. That's what this has been about, is choice. When we presented this, I remember my neighbors calling me and saying, "What are you doing making me not have PG&E?" I said, "You still have a choice of PG&E." Is it? And none of them like PG&E, but they just wanted that choice. Well, they still have that choice, and they still have the choice of going with the lighter green if they want to. They have that choice. My issue is not that at all. My issue is I love this idea. I think it's the right one in the right time. And Jamie, it sounds like you're thinking, what's the next step? What is the next step?
If your board authorizes this proposal, the next step would be for the procurement team to work on procuring the incremental energy that would be needed for these additional customers. If that didn't require anything other than what we currently have, solar and wind, we would work internally to update our communications materials. And on January 1 of next year, we would default all new accounts starting with service into deep green. It's my understanding that if it did require additional or alternative sources to California solar and wind, as is currently made up of deep green, then we would bring that back to a future board meeting for discussion and evaluation by your board.
Okay. And we're going to be 8,800 new customers a month, 100,000 a year. I know that it doesn't change us all over because I'm I'm probably not moving real quickly, and I'm not going to change but I'm already deep green, so that doesn't matter. But how long is it going to take us to get a pretty good representation of the folks, 100,000 a year? That's quite a bit of changeover.
That's a great question.
Yep.
Oh, Garth,
Yeah.
are you going to answer that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I will. So we have about 580,000 customers right now, Director Wagenknecht. So but again, that 100,000, some will opt out completely when they sign up and when they move into the MCE service area. We do expect customers as well to say, because again, they're going to have the option. They're going to see this is what you're opting. If you have the option to go to light green and you have the option to opt out. So we have those numbers factored in there as well. And as you say, I also don't intend on moving and don't expect to move over the next 5 or 10 years. So that turn, the actual churn, if you will be much less than 100,000 a year, because some people will move back into these apartments or these homes and so on. And so, but we do expect to sort of hit that 90% number, given that, attrition over time of new customers and additional customers, and then retaining those customers in deep green, we expect to hit that 90% level of renewable energy being served to our customers sometime around 2026 or 27 with this program. So it accelerates it by a couple of years based on our goal otherwise. So we intended, with that goal, we intended to be purchasing and providing more renewable electricity anyway to our customers, but probably at, maybe a slightly lower price. So that whole combination, but, again, we don't really know where the price is going to be to have to provide that much renewable. But so there's a convergence there between what we were intended to do already and this program, which will accelerate it somewhat.
Good. Thank you.
Let's see, Director Quinto.
Thank you, Chair. For El Cerrito, I truly believe, when folks move into my city, they're moving here because they know we have MCE and we're represented from to MCE. So most of our residents turn to MCE and opt out of PG&E. In regards to the CARES Act, seeing how much we do for lower income residents throughout the counties that represent MCE, I think it's fantastic what we do. So I truly believe that with this new setup, making sure customer service explains everything to them in layman's terms, you will see the people that won't be able to afford it, you'll see them opt out. So this is a no-brainer to me, and I will definitely support this. I think this is a good deal and good for combating climate change, and I will be supporting this for the city of El Cerrito. Thank you.
Director Rice, did you?
Yes.
Well, let me go to Director Onoda. I saw your hand up, and then it went down, and now it's back up again.
Thank you. And this is so interesting, and I applaud MCE for putting this out. And I can see both sides of this story. And knowing Moraga the way I do, there's lots of people who have lots of opinions, and they're really smart people. And I can see some that would applaud this and be excited that you are kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. And there are others that would be irate. So I think what I have seen and what I have learned, it's in how the person who moves, how they get the information, how is that packaged so that they feel that they have a choice, so they don't feel like that they're being made to do this. So how do you plan on delivering this message? I don't know who's going to answer that.
Yeah, I can start.
I think Jamie's going to answer it, but if you don't mind, Jamie, I do want to make one comment because I think Director Green was making a point about choice. And I just wanted to make sure it's super clear that right now we are making a choice for how we default all customers. But the choice that we're making for the default is 60% renewable. You know, folks are getting light green when they move into our territory. So that, you know, we have to pick one thing to be the default. So I just want to clarify that we're not taking away choice by doing this. We're just changing what the default choice is to start at that 100% level. Folks can still opt out and switch to the light green if they want to. So I just wanted to make sure it's really clear that we're not taking away a choice. We're just changing what the default choice is. But yeah, Jamie, please go ahead and talk about how we will communicate this.
Great, thank you. For the new account starting service in our communities, we send them 2 direct mailers to let them know that they've been enrolled in MCE. So we would be letting them know that they've been enrolled in Deep Green. We would send the first within their first 30 days of the account start, and the second within the second 30 days. So 2 notices within 60 days. The notices would explain all of their options. So they're very clear and simple and straightforward. We let them know, you know, what they've been enrolled in, what the cost is, and what their other options are. And one of the things that's also exciting about this proposal is that we'd be creating a new variation of choice for our customers, because right now they're enrolled into light green and they can opt up or they can opt out. If we went with this, customers would be able to opt down. So if Deep Green didn't feel right for them, but they still wanted to stay with MCE, they would have another option that they could opt down into before completely opting out to PG&E. So we have those 2 formal notices. And then in addition to that, we do tons of community outreach just so that folks know who we are. I think a lot of you are up to speed on some of those things that we're doing within your communities based on those emails that we send out to you all. But actually the next item on the agenda, I'll be talking more about that. But you know, we coordinate with our chambers of commerces for new businesses so that they're aware. We do advertising and lots of blogs and social media, and you know, really just connecting with any kind of community-based organization that we can to help share the news, well, the information, so that people are educated on what their choices are.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that these 2 mailers show them that this is what they have. This is, you know, like this is their default. Mm-hmm. And then they have the opportunity to go to light green or to PG&E. And there's prices for each of those. So they completely understand what their options are.
Yes. And I would also add on that when folks get their bills, it very clearly says on the front page of their bill that they have MCE electric generation charges, and our phone number is on the bills and our contact information. And we have our own service center that's run in-house at MCE, so that if customers call in, we can pull up their account on the spot, let them, you know, we can even do customized bill comparisons for them on the spot. But we have a team of folks who are ready to serve them if they reach out to us directly. Same thing if they contact PG&E, PG&E will direct them over to our service center to talk about our options and services.
Okay, thank you very much. I feel more comfortable with this default and I will be voting yes. Thanks.
Back to Supervisor Rice, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Butt. My question was directly to Dawn's point around, isn't there already a default in place? Or what is how is a customer enrolled now? Obviously there has to be some baseline, and the same is true for PG&E. If you're a PG&E customer, there's a default. So anyway, but that was a really great explanation. So I think that, you know, it's a policy decision on our part as to what that default choice is going in. And I think it's really important that the information that goes to these new customers, as it were, is clear in terms of what their choices are, though the starting point is that default, where we put it as policymakers. My question is, and I think I heard this earlier in the presentation, is there some discretion that we can make as policymakers as to either that premium that's being charged for deep green and or the allocation or distribution of whatever excess monies beyond operating cost can go? And I'm asking this question for two reasons. One, towards eventually eliminating, the cost differential or minimizing the cost differential. And so there isn't the economic necessarily strata is much narrower. And then two, towards as policymakers really directing those monies that we have, the excess revenues that we do have, to either promote to promote green technology, more folks on deep green, and or support equity initiatives. Those are discretionary calls we can make.
Yeah, and that's part of the budget setting process that we do every year. So we'll actually be talking about that starting in January of next year, how we want to allocate those funds.
And then with regards to the default, we've already made a choice about what the default is right now, and we're deciding whether or not to change the status quo to deep green. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very comfortable with this, and I applaud staff for being innovative, but also I think it's been a really good discussion and an important one. Thank you.
Director Zorn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. But I just wanted to chime in. I appreciate Director Wilkinson for always asking the hard questions, and I was listening quietly the whole time, and I appreciate everyone, kind of contributing to this conversation. I wanted to be honest and at least voice that there's a few other people out here that are quietly listening that are just concerned about this proposal, and I haven't decided which way I'm going to vote yet. So hopefully a few more people raise their hands. But I just wanted to say that when this first came on the agenda, I was excited because going deep green means that all of our new customers will be 100% in, will have the most renewable energy. That sounded great. And then when we said in year one, we'll have a net revenue increase of 2.4 million, but that's just the first year, right? If you go up to our projections for 2025, it goes up to 6.6 million. And in the context of our rate increases that we made a couple of months ago, and some of these other decisions that we've had to vote on over the past several months, it made me concerned that this default to deep green wasn't being driven by 100% renewable, but was being driven by the hopeful projection of a $6.6 million net revenue in 3 years. So that's why I have been quietly trying to figure out which way I'm going to vote. And I appreciate everyone saying that they feel comfortable, but I'm still a little bit hesitant. So if I do vote yes, I just want you to know that I am a little bit hesitant because I've been looking at that. But I very much appreciate the intention of everybody going deep green. And I'm interested to hear what maybe a few other people have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to make a comment on that because it's a fair question. And I think my reaction is just kind of a reminder that we're a public agency and we set our budget every year based on how the board wants it to be set. The board sets rates typically every year, depending on what the cost of power is. We're not, a private corporation that's squirreling away dollars, for future use, because we're not a for-profit corporation. So I think it's a fair question, but I just want to, turn it back to the board to and just remind everyone tuning in that this is a public agency that is set up to serve the community first and foremost, and it's not set up as a profit-making corporation. So that's where the intention of this is really coming from, at least from the staff level, is to serve our mission and help us get closer to those greenhouse gas reductions that we want to achieve. But it's up to your board to make the policy decision about where we want the default to be, where we want the dollars to be spent. And going forward, if we can lower rates, wonderful. If we end up, having to pay more for power, then we might be looking at the other side of the coin. But that'll be dependent on the market. I did want to flag that one of our excellent staff members here who was part of the analysis, Zay Perrin, is with us. And I think he had a couple of comments related to the question about the budget analysis and the staff report. So I want to give Zay a moment to weigh in on that.
Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify and recognize that there is an error in what the calculation says on the chart. So when you're looking at the net impact to operating fund, that is line 6 on the chart. And that's the math of line 3 minus 4 minus 5. I've heard a lot of folks say we're looking at a $6.6 million kind of bottom line, but that 6.6 million is the math of line 3 minus line 7, not 4 minus 6. And those monies are all going towards the LRE PDF fund. So we're really talking about the potential to our operating fund of 70,000 in the first year, 133,000 in the second, and 1.15 million in the third. And that's pursuant to costs as we see them now. So I just wanted to bring clarity to that so that we're all talking apples to apples.
Yeah. And if I might weigh in on similarly, as Dawn said, we're now charging an additional 1 cent for deep green. If we determine that we don't have to charge that much, we can come. The board could adjust that, make it half a cent, whatever we feel. If we're able to afford to provide additional renewables at a price that would allow us to reduce that premium, then that's certainly something the board could do. So we just assume in this analysis that 1 cent carries forward for the next few years with increasing customers that will be on deep green.
Director Fong, did I see a hand go up? It went up, but then it went down.
Well, then it just went up and then it just went down. So I'm back on. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions. And again, this is just my thought, but both conceptually and socially, I think I get what we're trying to achieve here. I really believe that this is a communication challenge. And it's a communication challenge because we're going to have neighbors next to each other. One say, I'm getting charged this. And the other one says, no, I'm getting charged that. One says, hey, I was told what I was going to be charged when I moved in. And the other one's going to say, well, I was told, but this is what the number is. I really believe that if we're going to move forward, that we need to have a much more robust communication plan strategy and how we can partner with our communities to support this. The second question, and it's really a first question, which is, we don't know where this is going to end up. We don't know what the implications are, good and bad. Has there been any thought that we test this in a jurisdiction or two to get some data points to really understand what the implications are or feedback from what we're trying to achieve here? And secondly, what's our exit strategy if we find that our operating costs are significantly increasing at a higher rate, and two, that we're not getting the subscriptions that we're forecasted on your plan today? Those are my comments and questions.
Anybody want to respond to any of that, or just comments?
I'll say I appreciate your perspective on the communications. I agree that the communications are very important. One piece of information I will share is that in the past at MCE, we actually have been in the situation where we have, before we rolled out service to all of, this is like way back originally, but before we rolled out service to everyone in Marin County, we did it in smaller phases. And I remember that what you just expressed about concern about one neighbor having one service and the other one not, and there being confusion because there wasn't alignment, was something that we had flagged and we were preparing ourselves for. But at least based historically on when we were rolling out large waves of customers, we did it not geographically based. So customers were sprinkled all throughout our service area. And we actually didn't find that to be a problem with customers. Most people weren't honing in into that specific detail of their bills. So that question in the past, at least, has been rare about like, I'm getting this and my neighbor is getting that. There is a small group of customers, our solar customers who have net energy metering, who definitely tend to pay much more close attention to their bill. And I think that is a group that we provide special notice to with additional information, because we know that they're wanting it and they're paying a lot of attention and wanting all of the details. So we're sure to provide that to them. We are going to be meeting with our Community Power Coalition at the end of August, and we were planning on putting this on the agenda to solicit feedback from them about our communications plan and the work that will be going into it, so that they could help advise us. The Community Power Coalition is made up of community-based organizations throughout the service area, and they really help direct our work in implementing our programs and policies. And so we are looking forward to, if your board approves this, to working with them on that communications plan. And then there was another question about exit strategy. Dawn, did you want to take that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think that if we found that we were running into challenges, then we would come back to your board and consider switching back the default to what it was before. I think we would need some time to see how it goes. We certainly have a bit of cushion and some lead time to play things out. But we'd absolutely come back to the board if we needed to make adjustments after the fact.
And I do have one final comment, and it's regarding choice. Obviously our town and many of the other jurisdictions are right in the midst of the housing element right now. And really the opposition towards what we call very draconian and prescriptive decisions being made, and really the local jurisdictions not having the empowerment to make the right decisions to support whatever the goal might be. I think there's going to be a perception that this is draconian, that the consumer doesn't have a choice, and that if we're going to move forward because it is the right thing to do, then we've got to address how this is not just another state agency or public agency that's basically sticking something down their throat and is costing consumer money, especially right now when the economy is as vulnerable as it is. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Director Wilkinson. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I agree fully there with what Commissioner Holm has said, which is that we are in this strange moment where there is a perception of government overreach, of citizens being told they're wrong and that their elected officials and their government is going to tell them what to do. And it also coincides at a moment when MCE is already increased rates significantly with significant net income projected for this year. And it looks like it's more, that's a perception, is it? It looks like it's more of the same. And to me, that I'd be more comfortable with that if it was across the whole MCE district community, but it's not. You're picking on one group because it seems like a sneaky way to get it in without them noticing. And that seems really unfair. And so the question I had at the end of all of that is, so you say that you communicate to these new people that they have choices. Do you say to them in that communication, by the way, 85% of people sign up for light green and you would be an outlier with deep green, and yay, that's really wonderful of you? Or is it not transparent? Because to me, that would be something that would be really important, because I really worry this is going to come and bite you on the ass, excuse my language, with the times that we're currently living in. It feels too much. But I've said my piece, and I'll let it lie. But I would love to know that question about how much transparency is there in that communication, because if you don't give them that information, that is incomplete information, and that isn't a fair way for them to have to make an assessment as to their role in cleaning up the climate.
Director Quinto, and then Pierre.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure with what Garth mentioned regarding that 1 cent that everyone is talking about, and that 1 cent hopefully will help with a lot of the CARES clients that we have right now, and we're not out of this COVID period yet, and they're saying recession in the future, and but making sure that that 1 cent would be a possibility to use in the future to make sure we have additional funding for our low-income people and and use this throughout the MCE area, and to make sure that we have money for that as well. And that is equity, and that is helping our challenged communities. And I truly believe that even though it's just a penny, it all adds up. It will truly support the communities of color and the challenged communities that we have in our area. Thank you.
Director Thier, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's critically important that when we're making decisions that on this board, that we focus on the mission. And, the mission here is to provide cleaner, greener energy. That was why this organization was founded. And I also think it's important to remember, staff has just told us that our customers have a choice. And the difference is which program they're in when they start. And they are given all of the information that says you can go, whether you're put in light green or whether you're put in deep green, you can move. You can move between the programs. So I don't see in my mind voting on this is taking away anyone. How is it less equitable to put someone in deep green than to put them in light green? I think it's actually the better choice to put them in deep green. In addition, I don't think that there's an equity issue at all. And I think it would be great if we could move everyone into deep green. And, I think the agency may work on that, but this is a step forward towards doing that. And I just, again, wanted to express my support and express my appreciation for staff and for us following the mission of this organization.
Okay, thank you.
If I may take a quick moment, Director, but I just wanted to answer Director Wilkinson's
question. Sure, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Regarding transparency. So we are completely transparent. My team is also trained and very happy to help customers with their options. And I don't think it's necessarily apples to apples to say 85% choose, because we're talking about the difference in a default, right? So 85% of our customers are on light green right now because they were defaulted to it. I think the important thing is for my team and for us to acknowledge what those choices are and what the right fit for the customer is for what they want to accomplish for their own household and for their community. So that's what my team projects. That's what we offer. That's what the website shows and will show. And that's what my team is ready to discuss with customers and advise them and what's best for them and allow them to make that choice.
And if I could tag on to that, Zay, thank you for that explanation. I just also wanted to point out, in case it's not obvious, there's been a lot of comment around affordability. And I just wanted to clarify that Deep Green is currently cheaper than PG&E's 30% default product, 30% renewable default product. So what we would be transitioning folks to, at least based on today, and we can't control where PG&E's rates might go in the future, but today Deep Green is cheaper than what PG&E has to offer. So I just wanted to clarify that in case folks were thinking of Deep Green as a super expensive thing. It's actually cheaper than PG&E's main product.
Director Beckman, and then Haroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this will be my last comment of the evening as well. I just want to say I definitely agree with the concerns that board members have raised about the importance of really sensitive and transparent communication about this change that we're considering with our customers. I think that's key, and I really appreciate MCE's staff in making clear that they understand that and that they're prepared, should the board direct them to roll out this change in a way that is transparent and is forthright with customers. So that really, that is important to me. I did want to touch briefly on the sort of heavy-handed state argument that we've been hearing, because I know that this is something that we are all feeling well as elected officials, and I know that our constituents are feeling it too, and we sure as heck hear it from our constituents. I think, the housing element was raised by, I think it was Director Fong, as sort of an analogy here. I just wanted to point out what I think is one critical difference. We obviously cannot move our jurisdictions outside of the state of California. We can't choose to exist under a different state's laws and not be subject to things like RENA or housing mandates or the other mandates that are causing so much grief in our communities. MCE customers, of course, can choose to opt down should they wish to, or take their business elsewhere altogether. So I certainly think that we can respect customers enough, to believe that given the information, certainly as we've agreed is important, they will be able to make that decision for themselves. I just want to close with one little anecdote that I've experienced, and I guarantee you that you guys all have constituents in the same position. I've actually had two different constituents who signed up for MCE, thought they were getting 100% renewable energy. Of course, they were defaulted into light green, and were very upset when they found out that they were only getting 60% renewable, and actually came to me and said, "Hey, what gives? I signed up for MCE and it's only 60% renewable." And so, I think that any way you cut it, you're going to have some folks who are getting what they're expecting. Some folks are not going to get what they're expecting. I think it kind of mirrors the point made by various staff members and also various board members that whatever you set the default option to, that decision is at the end of the day arbitrary, and setting the default to deep green is no more or less arbitrary than setting the default to light green. So that's why I'm perfectly comfortable with this. That's all I wanted to share, just to offer that up for further thought. Thank you.
Director Haroff, and then Director Dawson.
Thanks for that. I've already kind of made my views known on the merits of this proposal, so I don't want to repeat myself. I think it's actually about time to call the question on this. I don't want to cut off comment, but I think we've kind of thrashed things out pretty well at this point. On the transparency issue, I just wanted to make an observation, which is I've had the benefit of being in this organization for some time now, and I've seen it roll out programs into community after community in the most thoughtful and transparent way that I can imagine. And I have absolutely no concern that this proposal, if adopted, will be put out into the community in exactly the same way that this organization has always operated in the way it is communicated with the public. We have a great team in this organization to do public outreach. They've demonstrated their capacity to do that time and time and time again. And I am absolutely confident that if this proposal is adopted, they will do exactly the same thing. So as I said, I don't want to cut off any additional comments, but I do think it's about time to call the question on this. And that actually raises the question, what exactly are we being asked to do? And are we being asked to make a motion to adopt the proposal or something else?
Well, I think we're getting close. I see one more hand up, and that's Director Dawson. So why don't you go ahead, and then I think we'll try to take this to a vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Haroff. I agree with you. We can shut this down. The thing I wanted to just say is similar to what Director Beckman said, that I think a lot of people kind of expect that we'd be at the higher renewable place. And my only question would be, giving those people, like I know in Lafayette, we're less than 10% that are deep green. But I know if given the choice now, a little bit more education around it, more would opt up. So hopefully with this rollout of new customers, there will be an address to existing customers in light green to make the move because of that reason, that we all want to move towards renewables at a faster rate. People who are agreeing to this would probably be glad to move to deep green. So it would be great to know that there's a push on that direction too, in a simultaneous way.
So before we get to a motion, I just have a couple of comments. You know, the city of Richmond and I got involved in MCE about 2013, I think. And, you know, we were pretty proud of ourselves by doing something we thought was really significant relating to climate change. And, you know, since then, you know, personally, I've done things. I put solar on my house. I bought an electric car. I've cut my irrigation in half. But the Colorado River's drying up. California's burning down. And sea level's rising. And, you know, we're in a crisis. And whatever we were doing and felt good about 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it's not enough. And we have to do more. We have to dig deeper. And I think this is a good plan. There are two things a lot of people brought. One is we have a lot of flexibility. You know, every year we can set rates and set our budget. We can move money around if things aren't working out, or if people have a change of opinion about how we should allocate revenue. And the second thing is that people do have a choice. We're not making anybody do anything. If people want to maintain the status quo, all they got to do, well, first of all they got to do is not move. But if they do move, or somebody else moves in, they just got to check the box. They just got to check the box they want. And if they don't want to do deep green, they can, as people have said, they can go back to light green, or they can go to PG&E. So I think it's something we need to do. Again, you know, we're in a crisis mode here. So the staff recommendation is at the end of the packet item. There are two parts to it. I think if somebody wants to make a motion, you can just move the staff recommendation, and that'll take care of it. But if anybody,
public comment, Chair Butt.
Yeah. Go, who was that? So, who wanted to make a comment?
No, it's a question to bring public comment in. Yeah.
Chair Butt, should we go to public comment?
That's a good point. Thank you. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this?
There are no raised hands, Chair.
Okay.
That's not true.
I see raised hand.
Howdy Gowdy from El Cerrito would like to speak.
Howdy's here.
I see Howdy Gowdy down here with the hand up.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, board. My name is Howdy Gowdy. I live in El Cerrito. And I came to this from the interest in, well, first of all, I just want to applaud MCE for, you know, their efforts to, you know, continue to increase the amount of renewables in their portfolio. And, you know, I worked really hard in my community to get people to opt up to deep green by choice. And it's a slow and hard process. And it's, you know, very compelling and somewhat humbling that, you know, in a month and a half, you will double, you know, the number of, you know, accounts that have already chosen to opt up. So I really support this. It is a dramatic action. And I especially support enrolling all the Farah with no increased cost. So that's excellent. I mean, I would suggest that, you know, it's a slight equity issue that the existing Care Fair don't get deep green for no additional cost. So I would argue that that should be looked at as transitioning all existing Care and Fair as well as the new ones. You know, I think part of what has come up here is, you know, what is deep green and how do we, you know, best get to the, you know, the highest level of renewables that we want to do? Because obviously there's already the goal of getting light green to higher levels. And deep green has had this element of, you know, an extra amount of money, not just to cover the more expensive renewables, but to actually invest in, you know, programs and local development. And, you know, I think it can be easily argued that everyone should contribute to those excellent programs. I'm very impressed with all the programs that MCE has done. But I think there is always a place for that, you know, kind of option of wanting to, you know, provide extra investment in those programs. So what I was going to suggest is that, you know, with the idea that deep green might have to change as pricing and markets change, maybe actually an additional product that the default that people get enrolled in as new customers is 100% renewable, but it doesn't necessarily contribute. It doesn't have to have the same portfolio as deep green, and it doesn't have to contribute as much to programs, so that you could basically add another tier between light and deep green. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public speakers?
I see no raised hands.
Okay, so I think we're ready for a motion if somebody would like to make one.
I think we've had a motion.
Okay.
Who moved?
Second.
Okay, the motion was by Haroff and the second.
No. I think that we already had a motion to adopt the staff recommendation, but it wasn't mine.
Who was the mover?
I think it was me. It's Holly.
Okay,
Holly
all right. Motion by Thier and the second was by Haroff.
No, I think somebody else seconded it as well, but I'd be happy. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Who was the seconder?
If no one volunteers, I'm happy to do it.
Okay, thank you for filling in.
And Chair Budd, if I could make a clarification, because it wasn't explicit in the staff report, but it was mentioned by Howdy Gowdy, the suggestion that existing care customers would have their premium covered as well. That was an excellent suggestion by Howdy Gowdy. We got his letter a couple days ago, and we looked at the numbers and determined it would be a pretty small incremental amount that could be covered. And I believe Jamie Tuckey mentioned that during her overview. So I just wanted to make sure that that was included as part of the proposal, unless the board would like to remove that element.
I'm not sure I understand, Dawn. What?
Sorry. I'm just saying that what staff is recommending is that we not only cover the 1 cent premium for new care customers, but also existing deep green care customers would have their premium covered as well as part of this board policy.
Okay, is the motioner and the seconder okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. It's time for a roll call vote.
Belvedere?
No.
Benicia?
Yes.
Concord? Contra Costa County? Corte Madera?
Yes.
Danville?
No.
El Cerrito?
Yes.
Fairfax?
Yes.
Fairfield?
Yes.
Lafayette?
Yes.
Larkspur?
Yes.
County of Marin?
Yes.
Martinez?
Yes.
Mill Valley?
Yes.
Moraga?
Yes.
Napa?
Yes.
Novato? Yes. Oakley,
No.
Pinole, Pittsburgh, Pleasant Hill,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
San Anselmo,
No.
San Pablo,
Yes.
San Rafael, San Rafael, San Ramon, Sausalito, Solano County, Tiburon,
Yes.
Vallejo,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I told you that would be an interesting discussion. Okay, next item is item 8, public affairs. It's a discussion item only.
And
Thank
here we're
you.
going to have a presentation. Yeah, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I also am going to provide this overview about the work that we've been doing on the public affairs front. And I promise this will likely be an easier, breezier topic. This is discussion only. So next slide, please. Our public affairs work includes a variety of different focus areas, including communications, marketing, customer care, and community and customer engagement. And the update that I'm going to give tonight is really covering the work that we've done from January through July this year. So you're going to see a variety of numbers and statistics, and I'll just let you know in advance that those are January through July. Next slide. I wanted to first give an update on the Fairfield enrollment. I don't think we've had an opportunity to talk about the enrollment that we had for the city of Fairfield at the full board meeting. And so I'm very pleased to share that we had a very successful enrollment in April. We started service with 33,500 accounts in the city of Fairfield. That represented about 90% of the accounts in that community. The other 10% did make another choice, which would have been opting out of MCE service. The majority of customers in Fairfield were residential with a small number of non-residential. And I've included some other stats just to illuminate the community here. So almost 30% of the customers in Fairfield are enrolled in the CARE program, the discount program that we were talking about just a minute ago. 7% are enrolled in medical baseline, which means that they have a medical necessity for electricity at their home. And 8% of them actually proactively enrolled in MCE's own CARES credit program, which is in addition to the CARE discount program that we and PG&E also offer. We also had 100 residential customers in Fairfield opt up to Deep Green service. And pictured here is one of the advertisements that we had when we were working on our broad communications campaign to let the Fairfield residents know that we were going to be launching service, and also a photo from an event that rolled through Fairfield and EV, and you can see some Fairfield municipal staff and also one of our MCE staff as well. Next slide. So I'm excited to share this slide with you. MCE has a long history of award-winning work, and I think a lot of that has to do with our programs and the services that we offer, and just generally the culture at MCE. I think our staff are always really striving for greatness. We're really creative and we work to go the extra mile. We always want to do the best that we can for our customers. So I'm pleased to share these 5 awards that we've already received this year. Hopefully it's something that we can all be proud of. On the picture on the right here, you'll see from just a couple of weeks ago, we accepted the Clean Tech Award at the 10th Annual East Bay Innovations Award, and pictured is one of our colleagues at MCE, Martin Bond, and also Concord, one of our Concord Council members. So I am really happy that we're applying for these awards, and eventually, if we're back in the offices in San Rafael or Concord, you'll probably see these awards displayed on our shelves. Next slide. We also are continuing to do a ton of work with public relationships and really trying to deepen our position as a thought leader in the clean energy and clean tech space in California and across the United States. We've issued 15 press releases so far. All of these bullets below are what the topics of all of the press releases are. It's about our work in renewable energy and EV charging stations and energy storage and energy efficiency, and the list goes on and on. From these 15 press releases, we have received 32 what we call earned media articles. There have been way more than 32 articles about MCE this year, but these 32 resulted specifically from these press releases. And we had 2 stories that were really popular this summer. Dawn mentioned the virtual power plant that is planned in Richmond, and that received a ton of really great press. We have some fantastic articles. They'll be showing up in your monthly newsletter from us, so I definitely encourage you to take a look at those. And another really popular story was about the $3.5 million grant from the California Energy Commission for EV charging stations and clean transportations for Contra Costa, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority that we're partnering on. This year, we've also written 52 blog posts that we post on our social media and our website, and we advertise through search engine optimization, like on Google. If you search certain topics like energy storage, our blogs will come up. And we've had almost 16,500 readers on those blogs. I didn't include it here, but we can see how long people are staying on those blogs, and people are staying for 2 or 3 minutes, which sounds short, but is long enough to read the article. So it's great that people are actually reading that and returning to us as a resource for renewable energy and clean technology. And we also hosted 6 project tours here in our service area. So either at our local renewable development sites, we did one at the Napa Valley College for their new EV charging stations as well. Next slide, please. Shifting to marketing, we've done a lot this year on marketing. We've done 46 email campaigns and 27 direct mailer campaigns this year. I do want to emphasize that we've really been working towards relying on email as much as possible instead of paper mail. There are a lot of benefits for that. In 2020, we made our really big first jump by sending compliance notices via email, including the joint rate mailer and our power content label that the CEC requires we mail out, the California Energy Commission. And in June this year, we emailed more than 450,000 customers the joint rate mailer with PG&E. And that saved paper, greenhouse gas emissions. It definitely saves staff time, and it saved almost $100,000 in mailing costs. So we're really pleased about making those changes as well. We also started for the first time sending new community enrollment notices via email. So there was a mix of paper and email, and we got to have that opportunity when we enrolled the accounts in Fairfield. Next slide. I wanted to provide a little snapshot of our marketing. And so in June, it was a really busy month in June. We contacted every single one of our customers at least once, either through mail or email, sometimes multiple times. We delivered almost 200,000 mailers through 6 direct mail campaigns, and those were for our joint rate notice. So only 128,000 received that in the mail. The other 450,000 got that via email. We're marketing a program called Green Access. This is kind of relates to Deep Green in the discussion that we just had. As a reminder, Green Access is a program that offers 100% renewable to customers who are on care and are located in a state designated disadvantaged community. So they get 100% renewable, and they also get it at a 20% discount. So we're doing marketing for that green access program, also our CARES credit, that MC that your board authorized, Fairfield enrollment notices, and also rolling enrollment notices for customers with solar net energy metering. And these are some just snippets of snapshots of those mailers. Next slide, please. I also want to talk about the email work that we did in June. So again, we emailed more than 450,000 customers, including 2 press releases that led to 7 articles. Those were about the virtual power plant and MCE Sync, which is a smart app, an app for smart EV charging. We're also, again, marketing our CARES credit. And what's also beneficial about email compared to direct mail is that you can track the results of these marketing campaigns. So you can see, this customer got an email and did they sign up, and what was the success rate of that? So for example, our CARES credit, we had a 23% enrollment rate just for the month of June for people who got that mailer. So that was really positive and impressive. People are definitely reading it and really grateful for this opportunity to get deeper discounts on their bill. We also marketed our Certify and Amplify workshop, which is something that we invite diverse and small local businesses to so that they can get certified by the CPUC as a diverse business. And it really gives them an opportunity to amplify their business by connecting with additional opportunities. We continue to market the MCE Sync app. We sent our monthly e-newsletter to over 5,000 recipients, and you can see the click rates here. They're actually, 3%, 7.5%. They might sound low, but that's about double industry average. So we're really pleased with these results. And on the number 7 here, you'll see the board and municipal update, and that's a monthly email that we send to you all. We appreciate the feedback that you've given us in the past and recent months about the content. And I don't think we mentioned it before, but we are able to track to see how many of you all are opening it. And so we're really pleased that so many of you are actually opening and looking at it. We hope you are finding it useful. And again, we're always open to feedback about what kind of content would be helpful to you. And then lastly, here's the PG&E joint rate mailer, which went out to 462,000 people. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to shift gears to talk about our customer care department. So one really exciting thing that we did this year was we moved our service center staff to be in-house. Previously, staff at Calpine, through our contractor, they would take any inbound phone calls. They were really managing and running a call center for us. But we have moved that service center in-house, and it's significantly improved the interface with our customers. This year, just with that transition to having in-house staff, MCE employees talking to our customers, they've retained about 140 people who otherwise were planning on opting out, but got more information with us and decided to stay. And the average retention rate increased from 6% with our previous contractor to 15% with our in-house staff, which we're really pleased about. Our participation rate is also at an all-time high. We're at about 87% of all of the customers in our service area are taking service with MCE. I also wanted to give a quick update on the MCE CARES credit. We have nearly 40,000 customers receiving that CARES credit, which has equated to about 4.3 million distributed in bill credits to date. For reference, that's a $10 monthly bill credit for homes and a 20% discount for small businesses. And then green access, I actually already explained the 100% renewable energy service at a 20% discount for folks who are on care and living in a state designated disadvantaged community. We have distributed over 425,000 in direct bill discounts to over 3,000 customers in our service area through this program. Next slide. I wanted to give a quick overview about our community engagement as well. We are out in the community, not just doing remote events, but engaging with people face-to-face and real life. We've attended over 130 community events this year. We've hosted 3 Community Power Coalition meetings, and we're looking forward to hosting one later this month and talking about deep green as the default for new move-ins. We've hosted 2 Power Hour gatherings, which are those are events that we hold to invite our large our large commercial customers and also our municipal contacts. This year, or these 2 meetings, we talked about electric transportation and our Peak Flex program. We've been working closely with our chambers. We're sending monthly content to all local chambers. We're a member of every chamber in our service area. And we're also making sure that we're doing engagement in Spanish as well. We were interviewed on a local Spanish TV show called Charlando con Teresa, and it reached over 25,000 households in Solano and Napa County, with one of our MCE staff being interviewed on that. We also did our first Spanish presentations at a city council in Fairfield. We've also been doing Spanish presentations at some of the chambers. And finally, we did a Spanish radio interview on a local radio channel as well. You all are aware of the expanded youth engagement that we've been doing because of recent presentations to your board and communities about the Because of Youth movement. And I also just wanted to note that this year we've been actively participating as members of the Aging Action Initiative Steering Committee, the Marin County Electrification Working Group, and the California Clean Air Coalition Working Group. Next slide. Just a quick update on Deep Green is that this year we've had over 500 Deep Green opt-ups, 380 of them have been non-residential. Really excited that Danville and Moraga joined Deep Green as well. We also had a large account in Richmond, Levin Richmond Terminal, which included the Richmond Pacific Railroad, opt in to MCE from PG&E. So this was a customer that had previously opted out and then decided to opt up, to Deep Green. And then I wanted to show you this map here and this slide. We've had well over a dozen wineries. Well, we actually have had dozens of wineries in Napa go Deep Green, but there's a large group of them who are displaying Deep Green signage. So if anyone's looking to go on a wine tasting tour towards through Napa, I invite you to use this map here, and you'll see so many of these wineries proudly displaying signs about their commitment to 100% renewable energy. Next slide. All right, this is my last slide. I just wanted to show you a sprinkling of logos representing a very small portion of the community groups and the commercial customers that we're actively engaged with through memberships, events, and MCE program participation. We're really excited to be continuing to partner with these groups and so many others in furthering our mission and the work that we're doing. And we, as always, welcome your feedback if there are community groups or businesses that you think would make sense for us to connect with. That was my last slide, I believe. So next slide. I think that's the closing slide. That is it. Are there any questions or comments about the public affairs update?
Okay, thank you. Any questions from board members? Director Haroff, go ahead.
No questions, but just thank you for that presentation. It kind of reinforces points that I made earlier in the evening in a very dramatic way, and I appreciate it. But I specifically wanted to thank MCE for its sponsorship of the Larkspur Chamber of Commerce and its upcoming wine stroll on September 10th. MCE's logo is prominently displayed on all the posters we're putting all over our community. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Director Onoda, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question about your MCE youth engagement. We have at our high school, and at the college, there's an environmental group. And would the correct thing be for them to contact you and, see how they can partner with you?
Absolutely. I would love that. And if you have a contact, you're welcome to share that contact with us, but we can reach out to you as well and coordinate that.
Yeah, if you reach out to me, that would be terrific.
Okay.
Thank
you
you
so much.
I look forward to it.
Me too.
Director Quinto.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to say thank you to MCE for being one of our sponsors for El Cerrito's 4th of July Festival. So our residents are very much appreciative. This is our first time having that festival. We've not had it for 2 years because of COVID, but it was something that all of our residents very much appreciate. So again, thank you, MCE.
Okay, any other questions, comments by directors? Are there any public speakers?
No hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, programs update.
All right, we're going to hear from Alice Havinar-Dalton, who is our Director of Customer Programs.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. Good evening, everyone. I would like to use this time tonight, the programs update, to share some information about our energy efficiency programs. So as many of you know, MCE has been administering energy efficiency programs under the CPUC's statewide umbrella of energy efficiency programs since 2013. And every year around April, we publish an annual report that summarizes our accomplishments, achievements, and output from the previous year. So what I'll be going through tonight is the summary of our 2021 programs year. Next slide, please. All right, so the big story here is that our energy efficiency programs continue to grow. We increased our overall budget for energy efficiency programs back in 2018, and we're really seeing the fruits of that emerge. What you see here on the screen, the blue bar are our energy savings. On the left, we have electric savings, and on the right, we have gas savings. The blue bar is 2020, and the green bar is 2021. So our electric savings were up 238% over 2020, and our gas savings were up almost 500% over 2020. And the one thing I want to note, because 2020 was a pretty important year, is that we actually 2020 represents an increase over 2019 for us as well. So this isn't really just a rebound from COVID. We had an increase from 2019 into 2020, and that trend is continuing. So what did we do? We helped over 285 homes and more than 100 businesses save $2.2 million on their utility bills. We paid out $1.6 million in rebates to customers who are updating their equipment. And the result of all of that is over 5,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions avoided, which is the equivalent of removing more than 1,100 passenger vehicles from the road, or taking 450 housing units off the grid. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through some of the individual programs that make up that whole portfolio of energy efficiency programs. So starting with this one, this is our home energy savings program. This is a program that focuses on moderate income single-family homeowners, which is a traditionally underserved population with energy efficiency programs. There are programs that focus on low-income homeowners, and then there's moderate rate program or market rate programs. And what we found, kind of looking at the landscape of energy efficiency programs, that there was a segment of the population that really struggled to take advantage of standard rebates because they didn't have the money to do home upgrades that they could include, the energy efficiency components into a larger upgrade. And we came up with a solution that was no cost and really turnkey. We handle a lot of the work for our customers. So through that program, we upgraded 285 homes. Those homes received just under $1 million in value of energy efficiency and electrification measures, which included no-cost heat pumps, insulation, duct sealing, and more. They also received comprehensive energy assessments, which allowed us to kind of assess what each home needed. One really great thing that happened in 2021 is this program was awarded a $250,000 grant from another statewide energy efficiency program called TECH that's focused on promoting electrification. So we received this, what's called a Tech Quick Start grant, which just allowed us to do more with the funding that we had for these homes. So we were recognized as a quick way to get that funding to the people who need it the most. And that was how we got that $250,000 channeled into our program. And then down on the bottom of the slide under changes and improvements for 2022, this is sort of a wonky point, but I want to try to explain what this means, which is in 2021, the programs team at MCE developed and put into place a statewide benchmark for high energy efficiency measures in single family homes. So, you know, like I said, this is sort of a traditionally underserved segment for energy efficiency. And it meant that the way that we were valuing what these measures could do was outdated. And so we put into place this new statewide benchmark. It will allow us to better demonstrate the value of this program to the CPUC, you know, at a state level. But because it's statewide, it will also encourage other program administrators to do what we did here and offer more for moderate income homeowners to upgrade their energy efficiency. So it's kind of a wonky point, but I just think that setting benchmarks is traditionally left towards the much larger IOU program team staff to establish for the state. And so I'm just pretty proud we're one of the smaller program administrators in California, and yet I think this demonstrates how, despite that, we're still innovating and pushing forward programs across the state. Next slide, please. So next, I want to talk about our workforce education and training program. This is a program that offers services to both contractors and job seekers as it relates to the electrification workforce industry. So in 2021, we funded 42 Richmond Build students to be trained for green jobs. We placed 5 job seekers in paid on-the-job training with 5 local contractors, leading to 5 new green jobs. We held 11 field training meetings with local contractors to support electrification and to bring them up to speed on best practices related to electrification, and hosted 7 local electrification and energy efficiency workshops. Next slide, please. Our multifamily energy savings program. This is one of our longest running programs. And in 2021, we paid out over $25,000 in incentives to 4 multifamily properties to provide them with technical assistance and rebates for upgrading the efficiency of their property. This program also works hand in hand with our low-income families and tenants program, which serves specifically affordable multifamily housing. And through that partnership, we were able to serve an additional close to 1,500 low-income units. The one thing I'll say is overall, our energy efficiency programs did not see it take a huge hit from COVID and continued to grow. But the multifamily sector and multifamily properties are one of the areas where we saw the largest impact. And they still seem to be impacted by COVID and struggle to complete some of these projects that we've helped them scope out. So changes and improvements for 2022, we've increased the budget for some of our rebates, specifically targeting disadvantaged and underserved communities to help kind of bridge the gap between those qualified low-income units that can participate in LIFT and those that don't quite qualify, but still, are feeling lingering impacts of COVID. And we also included more electrification measures such as HVAC and water heating, heat pumps, and other electrical upgrades like panel upgrades. Next slide, please. Our Home Energy Report program is a program where we sent out every other month, we would send a notification to a select group of our customers that we had identified as potentially not being as efficient as they could be. Outlining how they were using energy in their home and identifying opportunities to do better, and also included kind of that neighborhood comparison, saying, how you are performing relative to your neighbors. We had around 67,000 homes that were receiving those messages. Unfortunately, we just weren't seeing the savings come through. We were measuring the savings at the meter after to judge the success of this program. And we weren't seeing the savings come through that we originally anticipated. So this is one program that we are in the process of closing out right now. Next slide. Moving away from our residential customers and into the commercial space, we have our commercial program, which is also one of our, alongside the multifamily program, another one of our very long-standing programs. So in 2021, this program served 77 customers and paid out over $500,000 in rebates. It showed 150% year-over-year growth in the savings that we recorded. And of those 77 customers served, 21 were considered hard to reach. So either non-English speaking business owners, very small businesses, or businesses in disadvantaged communities. And in addition to the 77 that went through with work projects, over 200 customers received on-site energy audits with information about how they could improve energy use on-site. Moving forward into 2022, this program is one of our steady energy savings producing programs, and we don't have a lot of changes planned for it. Although we did receive some additional funding from the CPUC specifically under the equity segment for commercial customers. So we'll be adding on a component in early next year, beginning of next year, specifically to help further that impact that we have with hard to reach commercial customers. So a bit TBD on exactly what that will look like. But yes, that's coming in the beginning of next year. Next slide, please. The commercial efficiency marketplace, this is one of our newer programs. We launched it at the very end of 2020. And then 2 months into 2021, it had already exceeded and fully reserved its budget. So we expanded it by fivefold. And in 2021, it resulted in 3.5 million in KWH savings. Just for perspective, that's about half of our total portfolio savings and well over what our total portfolio used to produce annually, looking back to 2018, 2017. So it's had a huge impact. That impact also inspired a new statewide program called the Market Access Program, in which the CPUC made $300 million in funding available to the IOUs and us if we wanted to request more funding, which we actually did, to create similar type programs. And some of the innovative features of this program is that we actually offer a different price for energy savings depending on the time of day that we expect those savings to occur. So we can offer a higher price for savings that occur during peak hours, sort of early evening, when our energy prices are higher, and it provides more benefit to us, provides more benefit to the grid. And we also work with a network of aggregators. So instead of having a single contract with a program implementer who helps develop all of our projects, we have a streamlined process where we can bring in partners that we call aggregators. And it's allowed us to bring on a lot more partners more quickly and allow them to operate with an appropriate level of flexibility while holding them accountable to the goals, because we pay out based on the savings that we measure at the meter after the projects have been installed. So coming up for 2022, this summer, we've offered kicker incentive rates that further incentivize savings in the peak 4 to 9 p.m. during the summer hours. And we also launched a parallel residential program so that it operates the same way, but for residential customers, and a second season of MCE's Peak Flex Market, which is another flavor of this program focused specifically on flexible load during the summer months. Next slide, please. Okay, and I think this is my last slide, but the last programs I wanted to talk about are our strategic energy management programs and our agricultural and industrial resource programs. These are some of the programs that focus on our largest energy users. The Strategic Energy Management Program provides coaching and helps our customers identify opportunities for low or no cost operational savings. They join a training cohort that lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 years, where they get ongoing support in achieving these opportunities that we help them identify in their facilities. So we've had 15 customers go through the Strategic Energy Management Program. That generated close to 1.5 million kWh in savings and over 160,000 in therm savings. It's been a really successful program in terms of feedback that we're getting from our customers. The projects that we identify are low or no cost and typically generate 3 to 5% savings for our customers on their electricity bill. And beyond that, we actually pay them for their time to participate in the training cohort. So we make it really easy for them to participate. They see the savings come back pretty quickly without having to put a lot of money down on the projects. And it introduces MCE to some of our largest customers as a trusted energy advisor. We found that program is a great springboard for introducing those large customers to other programs and building strong customer relationships. Moving forward, one more point in this presentation where we are leading in the state. We expanded the Strategic Energy Management Program to the multifamily sector, which was a first for California. And we have 3 properties enrolled currently. This 2022 is the first year that we're doing that. And we also extended the timeline for SEM training beyond 2 years to 4 years because we saw continued value and our customers were interested in continuing with that. And then also in 2022, we've launched a marketing and outreach effort to reach smaller agricultural and industrial customers. So I think that's my last slide, and happy to take any questions or comments about our energy efficiency programs.
Any questions from board members? Looks like you did a pretty thorough job. Interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Are there any public comments?
No, Chair, there are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, policy update.
Chair Butt, can I just chime in just real quickly?
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Sure.
No, I didn't get it up in time. I'm sorry. I just want, there's so many things, there's so many programs and so much stuff that MCE does. And these, the detail that was presented tonight, sometimes the numbers seem small, but the kilowatts seem large. But to me, some of the most striking things are when programs that we pilot, get picked up and modeled for statewide use. And then, just kudos to staff, but also the customers, whether they're residential or commercial, that actually engage. They're making it a mark that helps not only them, but helps, the analysis of the program for us and where it might go. But it's just really innovative work and creative. And I know it takes a lot of time and energy, but it's valuable. And I appreciate the presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think I already called for public speakers, right?
Yes.
So we'll move on to the next item, policy update.
Great. And we're going to hear from our policy team, Mike Callahan, and also Stephanie Chen on legislative.
Hey, everybody, good to be with you tonight. I will be introducing the policy update where we're going to spend some time talking about a couple issues and digging in a little deeper than we have in the written staff report for the policy piece. Next slide. We're going to cover 2 items tonight. First, you're going to get a legislative summary as we're here in the last month of the session from our legislative lead, Stephanie. And then we'll turn into a bit of a look at 2 dynamic rate initiatives that are live right now that are going to come across our desk in a bit. We'll hear from Sabrina on those. So with that, next slide, and we can turn it over to Stephanie.
Great. Thanks, Mike, and good evening, everyone. As you can see, there's quite a bit to cover here, and many of these points are related to each other. So just as a matter of procedure, I wanted to check if it would be all right with members of the board if we power on through this slide, pun fully intended, and then pause for questions and discussion at the end of it on all of it. Would that be all right with everyone?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Director Butt. Starting here in California, as Mike mentioned, we are just 2 weeks away from the end of the legislative session, and there is an unusual amount of activity still happening in the climate and clean energy space. We're still waiting for details on how state budget spending will be allocated in key priority areas, including transportation electrification, building electrification, and support for the development of green hydrogen. Throughout this session, MCE has been in communication with the administration and also with legislative leadership to voice our support for these areas and to offer suggestions on how to maximize the impact of these investments. Reliability and affordability, as I'm sure folks have heard, continue to be ongoing challenges really for the whole state. And the governor's office has taken some fairly drastic steps on this issue in the last 6-8 weeks or so. As was outlined in the policy staff report for the July board meeting, Assembly Bill 205 contained significant funds going both to the Energy Commission and the California Department of Water Resources to launch programs and procure generation that will support summer reliability over the next few years using state funds rather than ratepayer funds. These provisions allow investment in new fossil generation as well as new renewable generation. And as many of you are, I'm sure, aware, it also created very streamlined temporary permitting processes for these generation resources. And in the process of doing so, it removed a lot of permitting authority, also on a temporary basis, from many state and local agencies. Finally, with this bill, and much less controversial, AB 205 also included nearly $1 billion in electric and gas debt relief funds for residential customers who are still struggling to afford their bills during COVID. We anticipate that these funds will be hitting customer accounts sometime in the first half of 2023, and we look forward to providing you an update when that happens. Meanwhile, conversations continue to happen about additional steps that the state can and should take to address reliability on the grid, including ways that the state could support load-serving entities like MCE, who are continuing to push forward on renewable procurement in a very challenging market conditions. I will note that in part because these efforts are happening so late in the legislative session, we really have not seen the same level of transparency and public process around these proposals that we're used to seeing. But thanks to our excellent staff and our fantastic lobbyists, MCE remains an active participant in these conversations with leadership, and we're thrilled about that. Now, as Director Green asked about earlier, we are expecting that bill language will be formally introduced next week that will allow a 5 to 10-year extension of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Diablo Canyon supplies roughly 17% of California's zero-emission electricity and between 6 and 8% of total in-state electric supply, and it's currently scheduled to be fully retired by 2025. Under this proposal, PG&E would need to apply for federal permission to keep operating the plant. But similarly to what was mentioned under AB 205, the state permitting processes for this plant as well would be significantly streamlined. In order to keep the plant online, the state is prepared to lend PG&E $1.4 billion with the understanding that some of that amount may be recoverable through federal funds. These funds would cover federal relicensing costs, necessary capital expenditures, and performance payments to PG&E for keeping that plant in good working order in the years leading up to the extension. Going forward, IOU and CCA customers would pay a total of $460 million a year to support ongoing plant operations. If PG&E earns more than that amount by selling the plant's power into the CAISO market, customers would be repaid in full, and PG&E would keep any excess that's left over. Customers would also pay an additional $300 million a year into what's being called a power replacement fund that would act as insurance in case of an extended outage. Any money that's left over in that power replacement fund would then be dedicated toward wildfire safety. Now, on balance, this proposal would shift the costs and risks associated with extending Diablo Canyon away from PG&E's shareholders and more onto taxpayers and customers. So if this bill does pass, MCE will be watching very closely to ensure that costs that are paid for through another state or federal funding source aren't also passed on to MCE customers through the PCIA. Moving along, you may recall that last year, MCE supported a bill that required the Energy Commission to develop a strategic plan for building out offshore wind. As the first step of this process, the CEC recently established planning goals of between 3 to 5 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030 and 25 gigawatts by 2045. Now, for context, because these are big numbers, 25 gigawatts is enough to power 25 million homes and is roughly 11 times the capacity of the Diablo Canyon plant. So the next step in this CEC process will be a much more detailed strategic plan that lays out more of how we will get to these goals, which the Energy Commission will issue next summer. MCE is definitely interested in offshore wind as a part of our future portfolio, so we will be watching this with great interest. And last but not least, on the state side, earlier this month, the governor announced, actually between the creation of this slide and our meeting this evening, the governor announced an ambitious 5-point climate package that we expect will also be formally introduced in the coming days. The first bill would establish interim renewable procurement goals as we get closer to our ultimate statewide goal of 100% renewable and zero emissions power by 2045. These new goals would be 90% by 2035 and 95% by 2040, with the full 100% coming in 2045. And this is a proposal that MCE has supported in another bill in the past. A second bill of the governor's package would increase the state's economy-wide GHG reduction goal for 2030, so that we would move from aiming for 40% below 1990 levels to 55% below 1990 levels, which would be a significant shift in the pace at which we're decarbonizing our economy. A third bill would set a state goal of achieving net zero GHG emissions by 2045 and maintaining net zero emissions thereafter. And this is also a proposal that MCE has supported in the past in a separate legislative vehicle. Wrapping up this quintet here, a fourth bill would establish a framework for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And the fifth bill would prohibit drilling any new oil or gas wells within 3,200 feet of any place where people live, work, or play. Now, it is extremely late in the legislative session to be introducing any kind of new legislation, especially bills that are this significant. So the next couple of weeks in Sacramento will continue to be very active, and I'm sure that we will have plenty of additional updates to provide you in a full post-session recap once the dust has settled a little bit over here. So moving on to the federal side of things, we have a couple of exciting developments there as well. First, I am thrilled to let you know that the third of our 3 congressionally directed spending requests made it through the Appropriations Committee process, this time on the Senate side, and is moving through the federal budget process along with the 2 requests that were submitted on the House side. This third request is for $500,000 for energy storage that would support critical community facilities like fire stations, libraries, schools, and community clinics. Now, while we're likely to see at least one continuing resolution before the federal budget is finalized, we're optimistic about our prospects here when that federal budget does pass. And to have all 3 of our funding requests make it this far in the process in the very first year that we have pursued this funding is really a strong testament to the strength of the advocacy that you all have built, or to the agency that you all have built, and also to the value of the work that we are doing in the communities that we serve. And last, but certainly not least, as I'm sure you all know, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act on Tuesday, which is being touted as the most influential federal climate and clean energy investment in American history. Now, we could easily be here well into tomorrow if we went into detail on everything that is incorporated in this bill. So for now, I'll just touch on some of the most impactful parts. The IRA extended federal tax credits for solar and wind generation, and also, as Director Wilkinson mentioned earlier, expands them to apply to standalone storage and also to green hydrogen production. It also contains incentives designed to jumpstart domestic manufacturing of clean energy technologies and the critical components that are needed to make them work. On the customer side of the meter, the IRA includes incentives to help customers invest in many of the things that Alice was mentioning in the program's update: energy efficiency, heat pumps, electric vehicles, solar, and storage. The IRA also includes equity provisions that direct additional funds toward low-income and environmental justice communities to help ensure that everyone has a chance to benefit directly from these investments. So, in closing, just to zoom out here for a minute, between what's contained in the Inflation Reduction Act, what's already beginning to happen under last year's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the ongoing investments that California makes in all of these areas, and the investments that MCE is making out of our own funds, thanks to your leadership, this is really shaping up to be it's not an exaggeration to say that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change the way that our communities are powered. And in the process, while we're doing so, save folks money, improve health and quality of life, and create good green jobs in our neighborhoods. We're already beginning to explore all of these possibilities, both for MCE independently and also in partnership with our member communities. And we look forward to sharing additional information as it unfolds in the coming weeks, months, and frankly, probably years. And I'll close by saying, if you and your communities have any ideas on ways that you think your neighborhoods could partner with MCE in any of these areas, we would very much like to hear from you. We are excited to dig in and really help all of these great investments hit the streets in our communities. So with that extensive update, I will pause here for any questions and discussion.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members? I don't see any. Are there any public speakers?
There are none, Chair.
Okay, well, the last item is board matters and staff matters.
Sorry to
Chair,
interrupt.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually have, that was our legislative part of the presentation, but we do have a bit more on the regulatory front.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were at the end of it.
No problem.
That's all right. Thank you, Stephanie. And we can turn now to Sabrina to discuss the initiatives on real-time and dynamic rates.
Thanks. Yeah, good evening. My name is Sabrina Soldavini. I'm a policy analyst, and I'm here to brief you on 2 ongoing regulatory proceedings that staff is engaged in currently, which could have an impact on MCE's rates and rate-making processes in the coming years, specifically through the requiring or promotion of what are commonly referred to as dynamic or real-time rates. And I just want to say that when I talk about real-time or dynamic rates, generally, I think it's best to refer to think about these rates as building upon time of use rates, in which may change up to 3 times a day generally, to rates that may vary at least hourly or potentially 24 or more times per day, to better match energy prices and demand to real-time supply and grid conditions. And so there's 2 proceedings I want to highlight for you all. The first is the Energy Commission, or CEC's load management standards rulemaking, and the second is the CPUC's newly opened demand flexibility rulemaking. So next slide, please. Great. So what are the load management standards at the CEC? The CEC has authority to implement rules for California utilities to intentionally reshape utilities demand curves. And the CEC is currently in the process of updating those rules. And what they are proposing thus far is to expand those rules to now apply to CCAs. And that they may require the CCAs like MCE to develop and offer to all customer classes voluntary or opt-in dynamic rates, or rates that change at least hourly. And I want to highlight here that staff is not opposed to the idea of investigating offering more dynamic rates. However, we are concerned with the CEC's approach so far, which outlines a prescriptive rate-making process and requires compliance by CCAs, which could undermine the rate-making autonomy of this board. As you all know, this board is the entity with the authority to set and approve rates for MCE. So staff is concerned that the CEC would be overstepping its jurisdiction if these regulations were to be approved in the state we've currently seen. So MCE staff has been heavily engaged with both CEC staff and Cal CCA to work towards amending the proposed regulations to ensure that any participation by CCAs is not mandatory, but voluntary, to ensure that the board retains its jurisdictional authority, and also, really so that MCE can continue to only implement rates and programs that work best for our communities and customers. And currently, we're awaiting a revised version of the regulations, which will hopefully alleviate these jurisdictional concerns. But at this point, the CEC has indicated they're considering delayed implementation requirements for CCAs, but not considering making compliance voluntary. So we'll continue to update the board as we have additional information on this one. Next slide. And briefly, also want to flag the second proceeding, which is the CPUC's demand flexibility rulemaking. And this proceeding was actually just opened by the CPUC. And in a way, it actually builds off the CEC's load management standards. The demand flexibility rulemaking has really broad goals to establish policies and modify electric rates to advance many of the state's goals, all the big ones: affordability, equity, reliability, reducing curtailment of renewables, enabling electrification, and reducing long-term system costs through more efficient pricing. So the CPUC staff has recently put forward a white paper outlining a 6-step process by which all of these goals could be achieved, largely through the implementation of rates and programs that utilize dynamic rates, really suggesting to us that the CPUC will be looking heavily into dynamic rates to achieve these goals, building off the CEC's rulemaking, which essentially the CEC is saying you have to create these dynamic rates. And this proceeding at the CPUC is saying, this is how we want you to create those dynamic rates. Next slide, please. Yeah, I should flag, so far, we haven't seen anything from the CPUC in this rulemaking to suggest they're looking to force CCAs to participate. So we don't at this point have the same jurisdictional concerns with this proceeding that we do with the CEC's load management standard rulemaking. But regardless, this proceeding at the CPUC will certainly affect the rates that the IOUs like PG&E offer. And historically, MCE tries to have competitive rate offerings, meaning the results here could still very well impact MCE's rate making moving forward. So staff plans to engage heavily here to make sure that CCA and MCE ratepayer interests are represented appropriately. For example, that ensuring that any adopted rate design principles are equitable and consistent with MCE's goals and business model, ensuring that there's equitable cost allocation to MCE ratepayers, and ensuring that MCE customers have equitable access and the ability to participate in new demand flexibility rates and programs. And so this, like I said, this proceeding is really just getting started and will probably take a couple of years. We're still awaiting the procedural schedule from the CPUC, but we do think that this one will be an important proceeding for the future of energy rate making in California. So just wanted to flag this for you all here today, and we'll continue to, certainly provide updates throughout this proceeding as appropriate. And with that, happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Okay, Director Harold.
There you go. I thought both of those presentations were terrific. And I was struck actually by comparing both presentations. Stephanie's presentation on federal and state initiatives and opportunities was a source of optimism, because I think it creates opportunities for us and other similarly situated entities throughout the state of California. So those were all encouraging. Sabrina's presentation, which was just as well done, suggests that we are continuing to face regulatory threats from at least two sources, but the CEC rulemaking is particularly concerning. And I know that MCE and other CCAs are actively engaged in defending our jurisdictional rate-making independence, but that is a core principle for CCAs. And if that gets eroded by these proceedings, that would be very troubling. But thank you very much for those very thorough presentations. It's appreciated and educational.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Any members of the public here to speak on this?
There are no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, all right. Well, that does bring us to board matters and staff matters. Are there anybody that has any other issues we haven't brought up tonight and wants to bring them up now? Okay, well, I don't see any, so I think I'm about prepared to adjourn at exactly 10 o'clock.
Yes.
So
Good job.
have a
Good
good
job.
evening.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Good night,
Goodbye,
everyone.
everybody. Good
Thank you.
night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night.